You can memorize every preposition rule in the dictionary and still sound unnatural. Standard memorization leaves you guessing because you are missing the cognitive map native speakers use instinctively. Most English classrooms present prepositions through rigid, isolated rules. Students are taught that on identifies a surface and at identifies a specific point. This logic fractures when applied to the abstract world. If on is strictly for physical surfaces, the rule offers no explanation for why an English speaker is on vacation. These rules fail because they describe the result of a sentence rather than the cognitive process used to build it. Cognitive grammar offers a different approach, focusing on how the human mind physically perceives space and relationships. Prepositions function as verbal representations of physical, cognitive geometry. Transitioning from rote memorization to applied cognitive science allows you to stop guessing and unlock native linguistic intuition. We begin with an empty, three-dimensional coordinate space. Within any spatial relationship, the primary object of focus is defined as the figure. The environmental anchor or landmark that the figure relates to is the ground. Identifying the figure and the ground serves as the bedrock axiom for all spatial analysis. This diagram maps these two entities on a 3D plane. Their precise physical connection is dictated by topology. When the topology shows contact and support, on becomes a logical necessity. If the ground fully encloses the figure, logic dictates using in. Beyond simple contact, native speakers intuitively track physical orientation through spatial axes. Vertical space often implies a hierarchy of support, while horizontal space implies an expansive flat plane. This perceived axis forces a choice. You stand on the horizontal floor, but fall in a vertical hole. Choosing a static preposition becomes a matter of calculating the topology and the axis of the environment. Static states represent only a portion of the map. When the figure initiates movement, it assumes the cognitive role of a trajector. The sphere initiates motion across the grid, crossing the boundary to transform from a static figure into a dynamic trajector. This movement defines the path, the conceptual route the trajector follows as it navigates through the environment. This animated diagram tracks a vector line along the path. Native speakers project these routes to calculate when an object will intersect with a threshold. The preposition into specifically describes the active path of entry as the trajector crosses a physical boundary. In contrast, in describes the final static state of being inside after the movement has concluded. Rule-based learning often fails here because traditional instruction ignores the physical reality of the boundary crossing. Integrating movement transforms prepositions from simple markers into a map of continuous spatial journeys. Tracking a path is only the first step. We must also analyze the movement's intent. Cognitive grammar distinguishes between two types of endpoints: targets and goals. This diagram shows a vector line projecting toward an endpoint. In cognitive grammar, we define a goal as this intended destination. A target is the definitive physical endpoint. This distinction explains why we use toward for approach and to for arrival. We must also consider the patient, the entity directly acted upon or affected by the trajector. The sphere accelerates at high velocity, shattering against the solid wall to mark a precise point of violent physical impact. Here, the preposition at marks the exact point of intersection rather than a passive location. Identifying whether a relation is stative or dynamic reveals how a preposition's role shifts during an action. This physical calculus is rarely taught because native speakers process these variables automatically and invisibly. Mapping targets, goals, and patience provides the structural logic necessary to mirror a native speaker's intuition. This logical framework applies to temporal and abstract conceptual states. English treats abstract states as literal physical surfaces or containers. Being on vacation uses the topology of contact and support, placing your state of being atop a temporal surface. Phrases like in a relationship use containment, treating a social connection as an enclosed volume. Abstract prepositional phrases follow the mathematical projections of physical geometry applied to conceptual ideas. Stop fighting with lists of rules and start using the cognitive map of the English language. If this logical approach helps you, subscribe to Radiant Skills for more professional linguistic strategies. Language is not a disconnected set of dictionary rules, but a universally applied and scalable cognitive science.